On the surface, this computer looks pretty boring, but it's actually very interesting. If you don't believe me, just look at the front. There's composite and S-video inputs. That alone is super weird and something you wouldn't expect to find on a computer, but believe me, there's a lot more. I featured this in my last video on the Dell Crystal monitor and people seem pretty interested in it. So here it is. This is the HP Pavilion M9150F. It was coincidentally also released in 2008, just like that monitor, and was showcased at CES that year, but it has even less coverage. I found just 2 articles and 1 video from the time, and that's it. But I have it here, so let's take a look. The front is piano black plastic, which doesn't look too bad. At the top is one of those 15-in-1 memory card readers and a LightScribe DVD drive. And you know, I've never actually used LightScribe, so I'll try that out later in the video. I also noticed inside of that 15-in-1 card reader that there's this little window for infrared, so I guess there's a built-in receiver for a Windows Media Remote. And right below that is a blue HD DVD drive. I have plenty of Blu-rays, but don't own a single HD DVD, so I ordered the last Top Gun HD DVD off of Amazon. Right below that, there's an HP Pocket Media Drive Bay. Essentially, this is a portable 2.5-inch hard drive, but it's made to perfectly fit in this slot, so you can easily dock it. Inside the slot is just the male end of a USB-B printer port, so you can still use this drive without the computer. Front and center is the HP logo, which has a white LED behind it, and below that is the HP Easy Backup button. I'm assuming this is just some software, but it's crazy they put an actual physical button on the front of the PC just for this. There's 2 covers below that. The left one I already showed you. It hides a FireWire port, 2 USB ports, headphone and microphone jacks, and those composite and S-video jacks. This wouldn't be out of place on a VCR, but on a computer it's definitely different. Then under the right cover there's this big slot for the HP Personal Media Drive Bay. This is similar to the Pocket Media Bay, but it's for a bigger hard drive. You can see there's not only USB in there, but there's also a DC barrel jack to provide extra power. And I actually bought one of these for this video, and it looks like this. You slide it in and it perfectly lines up with those ports. In between those 2 covers, there's a hard drive activity light and wireless indicator light, so it looks like this computer has Wi-Fi too. On the left side, there's a sticker that has a bunch of info on the computer. It talks about having wireless connectivity and a wireless keyboard and mouse. I didn't get my hands on the original peripherals, but it's nice that they include wireless ones. It talks about this rubber landing pad on the top for peripherals. You'd probably end up just putting a camera there when you plug it into your computer. And it mentions a bunch of other features, including a power button. Now for what you've been waiting for, the back. There's a lot of I/O here. The power supply is up top. It's a 350 watt unit. Then there's a modem card. I guess it's nice that HP included the option for dial-up. Right below that is the most important part of this computer and what really makes it unique. It's a TV tuner card, which I guess makes sense and is how the front input jacks work. Besides the front inputs, this card has 3 coax jacks for FM radio, cable TV, and over-the-air TV. There's also another S-video and sound input jacks. That's super cool and shows what HP is trying to do here. Not only is it a computer, but it's a full-on media center. Oh, a Windows media center. Anyway, there's a lot of software that goes along with all of this, so we'll look at that in this video. Below that is the GPU, which has S-video, HDMI, and DVI outputs. It's an NVIDIA GeForce 8500 GT. As if that wasn't enough, the motherboard has even more I/O. There's line and microphone inputs and surround audio out. I feel like this computer is one of the few use cases where it's actually necessary to have surround out on a computer. There's Ethernet, 4 more USB ports, and another FireWire port. It also has VGA out, but the CPU doesn't have integrated graphics, so they covered that so you don't use it. It has PS2 keyboard and mouse ports, and not only digital audio out, but digital audio in. That's kind of cool. I guess if you had a CD player or something with digital out, you can plug it in and listen or record from the computer. And the last thing on the back is this little slot at the bottom which has infrared in and 2 infrared outs. You can have an infrared receiver on a long cord if you have this hidden away. And I'm assuming the 2 out ports are likely to control other equipment, but I'm not too sure about that. I'll have to look into that. But before we boot, let's take a real quick look inside. At the bottom left, there's a big slot for that media drive. The USB port on it plugs into a header on the motherboard, and the barrel jack plugs directly into Molex. Underneath that is 2 400 gig hard drives. Now if you look on that side sticker, it says 720 gigabytes. So HP is actually shipping RAID 0 from the factory. That's kind of insane. RAID 0 means the data is spanned across 2 drives, and if one of those drives fails, typically you lose all the data, and that's just how it works. There's no redundancy or anything, and it looks like this is software RAID handled by the BIOS. Disk management in Windows only shows one disk. To be fair, at the time, something like a 1 terabyte hard drive could cost $200 or $300, so they probably had a bunch of 400 gig hard drives laying around, and this was a good use for them. And then they could market it as having a huge 720 gig hard drive. Let's look at the GPU. As I said, it's an NVIDIA 8500 GT made by Asus. It's a mid-range GPU, nothing to write home about, but it handles Vista and all the video decoding pretty well. The TV tuner card is buried under a bunch of cables, but it's the Hop-Hog WinTV HVR 1800. This card is pretty capable, doing digital TV, analog cable TV, and FM radio. Each coax jack goes to separate tuners so you can watch TV and listen to the radio at the same time, for example. I actually made a video on a Hop-Hog TV tuner before, so if this seems interesting to you might want to check that out. And we'll have to test if this card supports analog TV. That'd be pretty nice. The cables plugged into the card go to some infrared receivers and the front video input jacks. This TV tuner card is really what makes the computer special. While I was in here, I replaced the CMOS battery and repasted the CPU. The CPU is an Intel Core 2 Quad, clocked at 2.4 GHz. And something interesting I found about this CPU is it's actually 2 Core 2 Duos essentially glued together onto the same module. That'll give you a 4-core CPU, but some people were saying it's a little bit slow because it communicates over the front side bus instead of directly to each other. It is pretty cool though. Anyway, now that we've seen the inside of this computer, I think it's time to turn it on. This computer ships with Windows Vista Home Premium, which is expected for a computer in 2008. The out-of-box experience is kind of what you'd expect from HP. You'll see what I mean in a second. Also, bear with me here, the screen resolution will get better after setup. The Windows account creation is the smoothest part of setup, username, time zone, etc. Then we get to the HP part. You're almost through setup, you get a glance at the desktop, and right as everything's supposed to load in, you get flashbanged with a white screen in capital letters saying, "Loading movie." Then it plays this wonderful video. I know, right? And I'm just gonna pause it here. HP clearly cares about us, right? That's what all these stock photos would have you believe. What do you think the next thing on the screen is? An ad for HP Total Care, which is a complete set of personalized tools and services for configuring, connecting, protecting, and tuning up your computer. If you go to register, it asks for a bunch of personal information, blah blah blah. If I click register later, you take a guess at what the next screen is. Oh, an ad for HP Total Care. After I already said no, I'll go fast through the rest of the ads. It tries to sell you a bunch of dial-up plans. Don't worry, AOL comes with 60 XM stations and 7 screen names. And we're finally done. It even claps for you and says you can use HP Total Care to activate Norton. Now we're finally free from all that and we get to enjoy Windows Vista. Oh, it's a video for HP Total Care. First off, can I just say that Vista still looks amazing? I prefer 7 myself, but man, this looks good. This computer handles the arrow effects well, and I even got a Windows Experience Index of 5.2. Anyway, let's open up Media Center, which will let us play an HD DVD and mess around with the TV tuner. The Media Center setup is pretty basic, like setting up Wi-Fi and all that. The one I'm interested in is setting up the TV. The first thing it asks for is a region, probably so it can pull program guide data or something. Then it tries to download the most up-to-date setup options, but fails due to the servers being shut down a while ago. I'm not even sure what those options would be, but I'm not too worried about it. Then I did the automatic TV signal setup, which just checks for working tuners with an antenna connected to them. I have one connected to the DTV antenna jack on the tuner, and it was able to pick that up. It tries to download the TV guide for my zip code, but fails because, again, the servers are non-existent. So without even running a channel scan, it just tells me I'm done and that it's set up. I had to go into the TV settings, then guide, then add missing channels. Then it asked me for the channel number that I want to add. I typed in channel 7, hit next, and then it asked me for the frequency number. I have a couple problems with this, mainly the wording. They should call it the physical channel or something, and maybe have an explanation for what it's asking, but what's it even asking? Well, each channel number is actually representing the frequency that the TV station can broadcast on. So for channel 7, that's 174 megahertz, channel 8 is 180 megahertz, etc. And in the days of analog, it was pretty straightforward. If you tuned to channel 7, that signal would be on channel 7's 174 megahertz. But digital is a little bit more complicated. For a variety of reasons, a digital TV station might want to broadcast on a different frequency. This could be to improve coverage or make the signal easier to pick up. If channel 6 wants to move to channel 21, well, it'd be a huge pain to rebrand everything as channel 21. Everyone's been calling it channel 6 for the last 100 years. All the buildings and vans say channel 6. It's a whole mess. But digital TV allows for the station to be physically broadcasting on a different channel, a completely different frequency, but still show up as its original channel number. So you tune to channel 6, it shows up as channel 6, but you're actually watching the physical channel 21. That's pretty cool and makes things really easy for viewers. And this is in the United States, by the way. I don't know about other countries. So Media Center is simply asking what physical channel it broadcasts on, but using the word frequency number is a little confusing. To be fair, if this was 2008, the guide would work and the channel would just show up without needing to be manually added. In most cases, you wouldn't have to see this menu. But it's not 2008, so we need to find the physical channel number. Luckily, rabbitears.info has listings for all the TV stations in your area, and it shows the display channel and the physical channel. They have other information too, like the resolution and frame rate of the subchannels and even the type of antenna used at the transmitter site. All this is pretty cool to me. I've talked about TV enough for this video, but if you'd like to see a dedicated video on TV, let me know. And after typing in the channel number and restarting Media Center, it works. It's displaying the 1080i video in a smooth 60 frames per second. I added another channel so I could flip between them, and it tunes pretty quickly. From here, you can record the program. It lets you set up the time range to record, and if this is a one-time or recurring event. Of course, if I had a guide, this would be much easier. The modern version of this is something like Plex. There are other options with their own pros and cons, but Plex is what I have set up on my own server. It's able to actually download the electronic program guide, and this is a much more familiar interface. I can click on an upcoming show to record it and choose to record all airings of the show or just new episodes. This is pretty standard stuff for a guide, and I'd imagine that's what Media Center would do. So digital TV works, but what about analog? In 2008, there were still plenty of analog terrestrial broadcasts, so it should have that ability. I went into TV tuner setup, but instead of choosing digital ATSC, I chose NTSC. Of course, it dumped me right back into the TV settings, so I had to add a missing channel, but this time it let me choose between analog or digital. Now, you might be wondering how I'll get my hands on an analog TV station. At least in the States, those were all mandated to shut down in 2009. But I'll be using this small-scale TV transmitter that I made a while back. There's a whole video on that and I'll link it in the description, but it basically takes in an HDMI source and transmits it as an analog TV station on any channel of my choosing. It's actually wireless and is pretty much like a TV signal that you'd see back in the day. For this test, I'll be hardwiring it into the back of the computer just to get the best quality possible. I made sure to use the TV/cable antenna coax jacks on the back since that one goes to the analog tuner. And in Media Center, I set it to channel 14 and set my transmitter to the same channel. Then I tuned to it, and it worked. It looks pretty good too. It even let me pause, rewind, all that. The record menu looks similar to the digital one. You can choose how often to record, time range, all that. And one more thing I want to try with the tuner card is FM radio. I'll switch my antenna to the FM radio coax jack for this. When I tested this before, I wasn't able to get it working inside of Media Center, but I think it's worth a shot. If I go over to the music section and click on radio, it says I need to set up my tuner card. So I ran the tuner setup again, but it didn't even mention radio once. It just said my TV tuner setup was complete and dumped me back into the FM radio menu. So I clicked on the default station, not expecting it to work, but this time it pulled up a tuner interface and works. I was surprised. You can even pause the radio and time shift. It also has all the standard radio options like presets, so that's pretty cool. I'm glad it worked. One nice thing would be if it showed the song and station information like cars do though. Anyway, enough about tuners. Let's finally watch an HD DVD. As I said earlier, I didn't have one, so I had to go out and buy an HD DVD. The format has its own story that I can't possibly cram into this video, but I'll give you the cliff notes. In the early 2000s, we needed an HD video format. So a couple companies developed a format that could handle the much larger file sizes, And we got the familiar Blu-ray from Sony, but we also got HD DVD from Toshiba. Well, naturally, this turned into a format war, kinda like VHS and Beta, except this time, Sony won. HD DVD tried, but Sony was a media giant. Not only did they release the PlayStation 3 with a Blu-ray player, but they also had their own movie studio that would release exclusively on Blu-ray. So if you were trying to decide which format to go with, I mean, was it really a choice? There were some pretty big titles that you might want to watch that wouldn't be on HD DVD, and there's a chance you already had a Blu-ray player at home instead of having to buy a new player. It's a sad story for Toshiba and their format. But what's not a sad story is that we get to watch an HD DVD in 2025. Now, you can watch it inside a media center, but there's actually a designated app for HD DVDs, and Media Center just embeds that app inside of its own interface. This app is super simple. It just says plain white text on a black background to insert a DVD or HD DVD, and then it just starts playing. And yeah, this looks pretty good. The image is really sharp, and I would be mind blown if I put in a DVD in my computer in 2008 and it looked this good. The one thing is there was no menu, and it just jumped right into the disc. Both the title and root menu options on the software just pull up this little bar with 3 other options. Pause does literally just that, and I'm not sure why they wouldn't have you use your normal controls for that. If you have a remote with rewind and all that, you have play and pause. Settings lets you choose between Dolby True HD, Dolby Digital, Plus EX, and DTS audio tracks, along with the subtitle tracks. Scenes is the only option that might have taken them a little effort, and it's just a chapters menu. There are preview thumbnails at least, and the bookmark option is cool. It says to press B on your remote to bookmark your favorite scenes. I hit B on my keyboard and that worked. It just puts the timestamp on this little black rectangle with no thumbnail or anything. And you can click on all of them and it does save after you've ejected the disc and all that, but that's it. I thought maybe HD DVDs didn't have full menus, and I was a little disappointed because DVD menus are iconic and it was a great way of interacting with the disc. But luckily, I think Paramount was just being lazy here. HD DVDs did support interactive menus, and some studios just chose not to include them. They still weren't to the same extent as Blu-ray though. Those had full Java support with some crazy interactive stuff. Anyway, HP's player actually had some settings. Aspect ratio, audio, color, and language settings, that was all there. Subtitles and closed captions are different options because those are technically different things, but I usually see those used interchangeably. Regardless, those are unavailable because you have to use the actual DVD menu for that, I guess. There's also twin format, which did nothing when I changed it to normal DVD. According to computerlanguage.com, they were trying to make a hybrid disc that could do both formats or something. I don't know. But yeah, that's the HD DVD experience on this computer. One way of looking at it is that it's simple and boring, but I like to look at it as being really seamless and just working. It's not like Blu-ray on a computer, which can have some annoying DRM hoops to jump through. It just works like a normal DVD, and I kind of like it. While we're on the topic of optical media, let's try out LightScribe. I said this before, but I've never been able to try LightScribe. The discs are just too pricey to justify buying them. But I got some, and I can't wait to try it out. I just want to say thank you to my Patreon supporters real quick. I had to buy a bunch of random stuff to make this video work, and their support lets me take a risk at buying an ancient portable hard drive or that HD DVD. So, thank you to all the members that support me. I appreciate it, and it helps me make better videos. And if you'd like to become a member, I've started making behind the scenes for each video, and those are pretty interesting. There's a tier starting at $2 a month. Anyway, in the start menu, there's a folder called LightScribe Direct Disc Labeling. There's a very basic quick start guide that just explains the technology and how to use it. The LightScribe control panel thing is pretty bare, but there's an option to increase the contrast of the label while sacrificing label time. I'm assuming it just runs the label twice and etches it in again, so I'm going to turn that setting on. Then we open the actual LightScribe template labeler app. It asks us, so nicely, to place a LightScribe disc label side down, so that's what I'm going to do. I got these discs in a 10-pack for $18 US. Not exactly cheap as far as blank DVDs go, but I think it's worth it. Anyway, after I do that, it opens the main window. It wants us to choose a template, and there's a bunch of them to choose from. My favorite one is the one with a camera, but of course it's labeled HP PhotoSmart. Some of these templates are kind of cool though. There are some that lets you put in a bunch of pictures and some more basic ones. You know which one I'm choosing though. It's not super customizable when you choose a template like this. I wasn't able to add text elements or anything. I had to make the Patreon shoutout in Microsoft Paint first, then import it into the software to put inside of that camera. The text was also super basic and wouldn't even let me do multi-line. If you choose a completely blank template, it is a little more customizable. After I made the design, it was time to burn it on the disk. I hit the preview and print button, and it opened the print dialog. That let me choose contrast, which I set to best. There was also an option for disk color, but that's more just so you can get an idea of what it will look like, and it doesn't affect the print. But see that thing on the bottom, underneath the preview? That's the estimated time, which is 19 minutes. That's a lot longer than writing with Sharpie. Mind you, I could do a lower contrast setting and it would be quicker, but I wanted the best contrast. Anyway, I hit print, and the estimated time immediately jumped to 25 minutes. So I made myself lunch and came back, and it was still printing. It took almost exactly 30 minutes to print. It is cool though, it shows a simulated preview of what the disc looks like when it's burning. And now it's the moment of truth. Look at that. Yes, there's not a lot of contrast, but I think it looks pretty cool and looks professional. The image turned out well too and has good resolution with its little HP Photo Smart camera. And if you look super closely at the text, you can see the individual rings from the laser. Yeah, I think LightScribe is pretty cool and a good, slightly expensive way to make professional labels. I forgot about the HP Easy Backup button. How could I forget, right? Let's go ahead and press it, and it immediately launches the HP Easy Backup app. This little video plays to explain if something happens to your data, like aliens abducting it, you can recover it off of your HP personal media drive. But that's about it. Jokes aside, I don't mind this implementation. It makes it ridiculously easy to back up your entire computer. You could probably do it with your eyes closed. You don't even have to remember the app name because there is a button designated to it. And the app itself is pretty simple and doesn't even try and sell you on HP Total Care. They clearly want you to use the personal media drive as a backup solution, while the little version of it is meant for on-the-go mass storage. I kind of like these drives too. They don't use some lame proprietary plugs and work completely independently without having an HP computer. There's even a little fan on the back of the big one. Mine actually didn't make it through transit though. It's getting power and the hard drive inside spins up, but there's no data. I'm not sure that it was shipping that damaged this. It could have just been broken. I tried opening it up to swap out the hard drive, but didn't have any luck. And now this plastic piece is all weird. It's kind of a shame. I wouldn't mind having an external hard drive like this, but oh well. And now that I think about it, I completely forgot about the composite video inputs on the front. I kind of get the feeling HP did too. I'd imagine whipping up an app that lets you use it wouldn't be that difficult, but there's absolutely nothing on here. I tried using Windows Movie Maker, Media Center, Media Player, all that, but those all expect digital cameras plugged in over FireWire. So I'm going to use the software that is meant for the tuner, Hauppauge WinTV V7. But how, unless you open the computer yourself, which most people probably weren't doing, were you supposed to know who makes the tuner and which software to download? I guess it could be in a manual, but that's not a good implementation. HP could have made a super simple app that just showed the input full screen and let you hit record. Bundle it with HP Total Care. But I digress. I like WinTV, and I think it's a well-designed app. When you first open it, it immediately jumps into device setup. It asks if you want to set up digital or analog cable, FM radio, and video inputs. I guess we can also see what FM radio and digital TV looks like inside this interface. For digital TV, I can narrow down the range of channels it searches, which is nice because it can take a while, and if I don't have any channels or don't watch any of the channels above, say, 30, there's no reason to scan it. There's an optional zip code field, which is very clearly for an internet-assisted scan. Basically, it's the whole guide thing in Media Center which errored out and wouldn't let me scan channels. It's pulling the channel listing from the internet. But I'm not going to put in a zip code, and we'll see how well it does. And sure enough, it starts scanning and some channels start populating. It even puts in the call sign or station name. That is so much better than Media Center since it doesn't rely on internet at all. After that, it runs the external input setup, which is basically just asking which video standard I use. You can do it automatically based on region, or you can choose which standard and per input. So you can have S-Video be NTSC, and composite could be PAL or CCAM or whatever, and there's even 3 different flavors of NTSC to use. For FM radio, it asks the country again, and then does an automatic scan, and it starts populating the list with radio stations. It doesn't pull the call sign from the RDS data though, which would be a nice feature. Then we're done. Once you exit setup, it immediately tunes to a TV channel, but we'll look at that in a second. I want to check the video inputs. If I right click and choose find channel, it pulls up the entire possible input list, including TV channels and the FM radio station list and those external inputs. And I clicked on composite video. After a second it has to tune, and it works. Except it doesn't. Let me hit record and I'll explain. This is the front of the computer. I know it looks really weird because I ripped the panel off of it, but here are those video inputs. And yeah, there's nothing connected to them. I think there's something wrong with the wiring because it just says no signal when I plug something in. None of the wiring looks frayed or anything, and it is securely plugged into the tuner card, but it doesn't work. So I'm actually using the rear video input with this composite to S-video adapter, and it works just fine using the composite input source in the software, even though the only composite jacks on the whole thing are on the front, so that's a little weird, but it makes sense when you look at that adapter and how the card works. The adapter is completely passive. S-video has separate luminance and chrominance signals, or brightness and color signals, while composite is a composite of the two. It's putting both signals down the same wire. Anyway, that adapter is just taking that composite signal and putting them on the luminance pins. And the card just knows that and processes it as composite video, so it works just fine. And when you choose S-video, it just does normal S-video. And if you feed it a composite signal while in S-video mode, it shows as black and white, since it's not receiving that chrominance signal. Okay, so that explains why composite shows up in the software, but why don't the front jacks work? I don't know. The card is otherwise functional, and there's nothing in the software to choose front or back inputs, and that's a bit of a bummer. I'm sure if I spent some time messing with it, I could get it to work, but we got the composite input working, and that's all that matters. While we're in WinTV, let's quickly look at some of the other inputs. Digital TV works well. It also deinterlaces into 60 frames per second and looks pretty good. You can still pause and record, all that. The interface isn't as polished as Media Center. I can pause and unpause with the space bar in full screen mode, but there's no control menu that pops up to do anything with it. It also randomly crashes while trying to resume watching after rewinding. But generally, it works well. FM radio works too. It's very basic. The software kinda treats it as a TV channel just without video, so you can still pause and rewind and all that, but that's it. Okay, and a few more things. The infrared ports, I kinda glossed over. I can't find anything in Media Center or WinTV that's related to infrared, so I guess there's no equipment control. That would have been pretty cool for the infrared out ports. And for the infrared in, I'm sure the Windows Media Remote would just work out of the box, but I don't have one, and Logitech discontinued my Harmony Remote, which I will never forgive them for. Also, I don't have any digital cameras that have FireWire, but I do have an iPod, so at least I can plug something into that port. And it works as expected. It's nice to have a port on the front. I love these Media Center PCs. Something about this media powerhouse in a computer, I don't know, it's always been interesting to me. And if you're interested in more stuff like this, let me know in the comments. Thank you to my Patreon supporters who, again, help me buy cool stuff for videos. I want to grow this channel, and I'd love to have your support. There's a tier starting at $2 a month that gets you early access to my videos. Okay, I think I'm done talking about this computer. I almost passed by it, but the triple coax jacks caught my eye, and I couldn't say no to it. I hope you got a good kick out of it too. Thanks for watching.